everyone, welcome back to the Library of Parthos. My name is Sarah, and today we are talking about a highly anticipated sequel, at least for me, and that is The Hunting Moon by Susan Dennard. This is the sequel to The Luminaries, which came out last year. I do have a full review of The Luminaries, which I will link here if you are interested in watching that. I have a really weird bad habit of somehow missing sequels when they come out. So when I read The Luminaries, I was like, I need book 2 now. I need to find out the answers to all these questions. There's so much that I don't know that I need to know, and I need to know it now. So I was like, I can't wait. And then, you know, life got busy. I was reading other books, and somehow just like scrolling on Instagram, I came across a picture of The Hunting Moon, and I was like, oh, that kind of looks like The Luminaries. I wonder when book 2 is coming out. It's not the first time this has happened to me. I don't know what my problem is, and I don't know how to fix it, but somehow I like miss sequels. So needless to say, as soon as I realized that I had missed the release of this book, I ordered it, and it did not take me long. I mean, it's not a huge book. I was so excited to read it, so I did devour this over a couple of days. Also, at the time that I'm filming this, it is right after Thanksgiving, so I did have a couple of days that were just kind of chill where I could really power through this book. And I've said in a couple of my videos, like, it's something about the winter time. I think it's because there's just not a lot else going on. I get so much more reading done. Like, even you would think, like, over the summer, like, traveling more, like, I read when I'm on a plane, like, I read pretty much the entire time unless I'm watching a show. So, like, earlier this year, we went to Japan, and I read an entire book front to back on that flight. So like while I'm traveling, I do a lot of reading. So you would think that I would read more like during those times, but no, I don't. So it is the winter when I can really like power through a lot of books. And I've pointed out my giant stacks behind me before. So I really keep thinking like, oh, as soon as like Thanksgiving's over, Christmas gets here, I'm gonna be like ready to go. And I've already powered through this book, and I got halfway through another book like just over those couple of days. So I am feeling good about my progress so far, and hope that that is a good sign of what's to come this winter. So little bit of a tangent there. Let's pick back up with The Luminaries. So obviously this video is going to be very heavy on the spoilers because this is the second book in the duology. So everything wraps up at the end of this book. So if you are not wanting to ruin this book for yourself, or, you know, again, you're just not a person who likes spoilers in general, in the chance that you might pick it up in the future, feel free to skip to the end of this video. I'm not going to do like a giant recap of book 1, but I will kind of go over some of the important plot points to kind of set us up for this book. So quick review of The Luminaries. Winnie Wednesday is the main character. So in The Luminaries, there are 7 different clans, each clan for a day of the week. And the Luminaries have the very important job of keeping the people of Hemlock Falls safe from the forest. So every night in the forest, there's this like really thick, hot mist that comes up, and there are nightmares that spawn out of that mist. Typical creatures like kelpies, there are vampira, there are harpies, just, you know, all kinds of like nightmarish, like mythical creatures. So the Luminaries are the hunters who go out and kill these nightmares to keep the town safe. And within those, each of those 7 clans, they all have something else that they're responsible for that kind of ties into that. So, anyway, Winnie Wednesday and her family have been kind of excommunicated from the Luminaries because her dad was a Diana, or a witch, which is kind of their like mortal enemies. They're not creatures, but they are humans that are working against the Luminaries, or at least in contrast to what the Luminaries believe in. So her father was a Diana, so they were kind of kicked out, and there was like a 10-year, like, I don't even know, silent treatment. Like, they weren't really allowed to talk to anybody. Nobody was allowed to talk to them. And to become a hunter in the Luminaries, you do have to go through 3 trials. So Winnie, she decides that she is just going to participate in the trials. She's just going to show up and hopes that she can get her family back into like the good graces of the Luminaries by passing the trial. So as she does that, she discovers that the town has been wary, that's a funny word to use, wary of a werewolf that has been potentially causing some damage. But Winnie discovers that what has been the people and the damage that they've seen is not in fact caused by a werewolf. It's caused by another beast called the Whisperer, but she is the only one who has ever seen it or knows anything about it. So she does end up passing the first trial somehow, and then she connects with her old best friend Jay Friday, who helps train her for the rest of her trials. And where the story ends, there were still a lot of unanswered questions. So we didn't know who the werewolf was, though we were given quite a few hints. We didn't know what the Whisperer was. We found out that Winnie's dad had been framed, but we didn't really know who had done that or how or why. And Winnie had kind of passed all 3 of her trials, but she was waiting to kind of be formally inducted into the Luminaries along with the rest of her family. So that was kind of where book 1 ended. There was a lot of action along the way, which again, I just kind of skipped over. But in book 2, Winnie is dealing with some of the trauma that she experienced at the end of book 1. So in the last trial, she and one of her friends were very gravely injured. She ended up jumping off a waterfall to escape something. She was bitten by a werewolf, so they think. So she went through some pretty traumatic things. So she is trying to deal with that. She's trying to deal with the fact that people are now treating her like a celebrity instead of like she doesn't exist. And she is also dealing with the fact that now Jay Friday, her former best friend, and also her former best friend Erica Thursday they're kind of like revisiting that friendship. And so she's kind of dealing with her feelings about that and all of this other stuff while also trying to figure out who the werewolf is, what the Whisperer is, who framed her father, and all of that stuff. So that's the main plot of book 2. I don't really want to get into it anymore, keeping it spoiler free, because it's kind of hard. Like, that's the entire point of this book, is to like answer all those questions. So I'm gonna go ahead and get into some spoilers now. So again, if you're trying to avoid those, please skip this part of the video until you get to the book. Or again, if you're just somebody who does not like spoilers at all, feel free to skip to the end as well. So Winnie is a celebrity in Hemlock Falls now. Everyone wants to talk to her, do things for her. They call her the girl who jumped. They call her Wolf Girl. So she has all these nicknames. Everyone wants to talk to her. Everyone wants to be friends with her. At the coffee shop Joe Squared, the barista wants to name a drink after her. So like, she is just dealing with all of this fame and kind of doesn't really know what to make of all of it. On top of that, Grayson Friday, the lead hunter of the Fridays, was brutally killed. And so she knows that it was the Whisperer who did that. Everyone else thinks it's probably the werewolf. So she's again dealing with the fact that nobody believes her, nobody knows about this other creature except for her, and somebody has died, and she can't imagine how tragic that probably was. Not only that, because he was the lead hunter and he has now passed away, Jay is going to take up that place as the lead hunter. So her best friend, a former best friend, now maybe best friend again, is like the whole leader of the Friday. Like, he's in charge of it. So that's a lot for, I think he's like 16 or 17. So like, that's a lot for a kid to take on. And one thing, I was going to say this for the end, but I'll just bring it up now since I'm kind of already talking about it. I do really like when fictional characters experience trauma like they would in the real world, because I don't like when books are like, oh, this character went through X, Y, and Z. They're perfectly fine. Everything's totally fine. No, because nobody would be fine with those things. So, you know, Winnie, she went through a very traumatic experience. She was gravely injured, jumped off a waterfall, was dragged around by a werewolf. Like, she's not okay. She's not okay at all. And she doesn't act like it. So I do really appreciate that. That is not the focus of the book, because I also don't like when that becomes the entire plot of the story, is how hard things are for this character. Not how it is. There were a couple of instances where Winnie realizes that like this is too much for her and she needs to kind of back away. And I feel like that pretty much mirrors like real life. You know, if you were experiencing some kind of trauma, there are probably times where you're perfectly fine, and then there are times where it's all a bit too much and you just need to kind of reset. So for example, as I said, everyone has these new nicknames for Winnie. They start to howl at her and it becomes a lot. Like, a lot of kids at the high school are howling at her as she walks past, and she gets very uncomfortable by that, and just kind of needs to leave. And something that's really sweet is her friends start to pick up on that. So later on in the story, there's another experience where a bunch of people are howling at her. She's like, I need some fresh air. And they like rush her out of there to make sure she gets the time and space that she needs. So, I thought that was really sweet. And Winnie's not the only character who's going through that. Like, if you think about it, all of the characters have really dangerous jobs, or they're training to take on a really dangerous job. So everyone's got some problems, I guess. Okay, so kind of back to the plot. So Winnie is trying to figure out who framed her dad, and why he had to leave Hemlock Falls. So as she's kind of exploring, she has this map that she found that belonged to him, and she finds something called a dampener. So a dampener is, well, the one that she finds is like a cookie tin, and inside there's a piece of moss, and that is for some sort of magical source, and the dampener kind of, you know, limits the amount of magic that is pouring out of this source. So she finds that in a stream. The dampener is empty, the source is gone, the only thing left there is the moss. And so she kind of figures out that it was probably opened recently by somebody and the dampener was left here, and she's hoping that this will be a clue to finding out what happened to her dad. So she finds that, and then Jay finds her finding that. Now, the really inconvenient thing about where she finds it, it is right where Grayson Friday was murdered. Like, his blood is still all over the trees there. It's really gross. So Jay says, you know, you should turn that in because it was found at a crime scene, and she doesn't want to because she's hoping it will provide more clues. And so they kind of butt heads it a couple times throughout the book when they're arguing over, should she turn over all the evidence that her dad has been framed? Is it enough evidence to prove that has happened, at least according to the Luminaries? Could she get in trouble for any of the things that she's doing? Yeah, she's doing a lot of stuff she shouldn't. And eventually he just agrees to help her. They're going to figure out what happened. They're not going to involve any of the other clans. They're just going to try to figure it out themselves. Hopefully so that Winnie and her family don't get into trouble right when they're about to be welcomed back into the arms of their clan. So there's a lot of investigating on Winnie's part, a lot of research. She learns a lot about the Dianas. And throughout that whole thing that's going on with her, the town is trying to find the werewolf. So they have, it's well known that it's like a werewolf gene or a curse or something that like the person, like a typical werewolf, right? Like they are able to turn into a person. So the thought is it's most likely somebody in the town. We'll just test everybody for the werewolf gene or whatever it is, antibody, I don't know. So there are these different testing sites that are set up, and everyone is asked to come get tested for the werewolfism. I don't know. Whatever it is. And the results are kind of published on a website. So there are a couple of pages throughout the book. Let me see if I can find one. That kind of show like the results of the testing. Surprise, surprise, 0 like positive results. And of course, now that I'm talking about it, I can't find one. Here, I just found one. So that's kind of a stressor for the characters as well. So here it is, the testing portal. You can see like where the testing sites are, how many people have been tested, how many positive results there were, and then it says like do your civic duty at the bottom or something like that. So kind of, I'm skipping a ton of details, but again, like it's all working toward answering those unanswered questions from the last book. So I'm just gonna kind of like dive into those a little bit and then just read the book for yourself, like find out all those other little details. So Winnie and Jay are working together a lot throughout this, of course, and they had a little bit of a hint of a romance in the last book. So that continues in this book where they find out that they both have, you know, had a crush on each other for years, and neither of them did anything about it, which was stupid. And also Winnie is kind of rekindling her friendship with Erica Thursday, one of her other former best friends. Winnie and Jay notice another X on the map that her dad left. So they visit that site, and it's kind of this like weird dirt pit. It's like a walled, like a, I don't know, I don't remember how many walls there are. I don't know if it's 4, but it's like walled and there's like dirt in it. But there's also, again, like blood splattered everywhere. And so Winnie at this point is kind of picks up on a lot of signs that like the Whisperer is nearby or close. And she realizes that like this is probably another spot that the Whisperer has been. And that's not good. So they find that spot, and then Winnie does a little more investigating on her own. And she needs Jay's help with something else, goes to his house, he's not there, and his aunt says, oh, they finally, like, somebody got the werewolf. So I'm looking on my cameras, the hunters are out there, we're gonna track this thing down and bring it in tonight. And finally it clicks with Winnie that Jay is the werewolf. She finally puts all the clues together, got that one right, and she's like, nope, I need to go to him before everybody else gets him. Because even if he is the werewolf, as she thinks, everyone else is too caught up in loyalty and doing their duty to say like, oh, this is somebody that we all really care about, let's not kill him. Instead it's, oh, well, he's the werewolf, we gotta get rid of him. So Winnie goes to save the day. She does find him just slightly before her Aunt Rachel does, and they have this big confrontation where, you know, exactly what I just said. Aunt Rachel is like, listen, we have to take him out, and Winnie's like, he's my best friend. You like, would you do it if it were me? And her Aunt Rachel's like, yeah, well, kind of. So like they get into this argument, and Winnie is trying to heal him. She got injured earlier in the book, and Jay had all these like things to help heal her, all of these like nightmare contraband, I guess. So she grabs those and tries to heal him. And while she and her aunt are arguing, her aunt gets shot with like 2 arrows, and here are like 4 Dianas that have been tracking Jay through the forest. So Winnie is now confronting them, trying to protect Jay, and also now her aunt, who is potentially dead. She's not really moving all that much. So Winnie uses some of the nightmare contraband to kind of blow things up a little bit. She gets into a fight with the Dianas, and she is really trying to see the face of the leader because she's pretty sure that's the one who framed her dad. So she like tries so hard, doesn't get a glimpse, and she pulls out like her last vial to save the day. And interestingly enough, it's a vial of the mist that rises in the forest, like the mist that creates the nightmares. There is some research in the Nightmare Compendium that Winnie like has memorized that says that the mist has healing abilities for the nightmares. So whenever the mist kind of clears, Jay and her aunt are gone, and she finds her way out of the forest and to the hospital, where her aunt is okay. She's been healed more so than what she should have been with the way she got injured. And then later she finds Jay, and like they kind of like hash everything out. Like, yes, I'm the werewolf. You healed me with the mist because that's like how I heal myself. I didn't talk to you for 4 years because I had all this werewolf stuff going on, but that was stupid to push you away. And Winnie says, like, you know, I was so caught up with the fact that I was like an outcast now that I didn't pay attention to the fact that maybe you needed something as well, or you had your own stuff going on. So they kind of, you know, they finally say everything that they need to say. Everything's good there. And then Winnie finds her best friend Erica Thursday. She noticed something about the locket that Erica always wears, that it had like a moon and stars on it, which is pretty customary for Diana's to wear. So she says, like, you, me, Jay, in our little cabin that we used to visit later, you need to tell us everything because I basically know you're a Diana or you're somehow involved with them. So that's kind of where the story ends. So I have to say, when I initially finished it, I was so like not okay with all the still unanswered questions. So like, we still really don't know what happened to her dad. Erica Thursday might be a witch, which is like crazy because her mom's pretty influential in the town. The Whisperer, oh my gosh, I can't even believe I almost forgot to mention this. Winnie figures out that the Whisperer is not a creature, it's a spell that the Dianas are casting. But nothing else is done with that. So still things that are not answered, and my initial reaction was like, no, I need to know what happens. This is the last book, but I'm also kind of okay with it. Like, I'm kind of okay with letting my imagination fill in the gaps a little bit. I know this is supposed to be a duology. It does kind of feel like there could be room for a third book. I don't have any information about if that's in the works or not, but I think I could go either way. Like, the story kind of wrapped up in a nice way, but there's enough loose ends that I think we could do another one. There was an epilogue chapter that was like this crow that had been kind of following Winnie around, and it's very clear that the crow is her dad. And from my understanding of it is that he died, and when he died, he was turned into a crow. And there was like a brief moment of clarity where he recognized Winnie as his daughter. His wife like threw out bread and said, like, you have very kind eyes. So there's like a minute of like sentience for him, and then he went back to just like being a crow. That was kind of my understanding of that chapter. I'm not sure. I might have to go back and revisit it. But yeah, so as far as I know, that is the end of Winnie Wednesday and the Luminaries. I am kind of sad to like be leaving this world though, because it was super cool. But I would much rather it end on a good note than, you know, drag out and get tired of it. So highly recommend 2 quick, easy reads. Definitely true YA. Like, there's nothing super adult in these books. Very enjoyable. If you've read them, I'd love to know your thoughts as well. So that's it. I'll shut up about the Luminaries now. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.